For tonight's show, I will only be answering to Barry or Mr. Champlain.
I will not be calling you either of those things.
Call me Barry.
Ew.
Welcome to Hey, did you ever see that movie? I'm your host, Des, and as always, I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Lynn.
How do you dial a phone with a straitjacket on?
And back on the airwaves, the podcaster with a degree in terror, Tony.
Hey, how's it going?
Today, we will be discussing the 1988 drama thriller Talk Radio, based on the off-Broadway play Talk Radio, written by Eric Bogosian, directed by Oliver Stone, starring Eric Bogosian, John C. McGinley, Alec Baldwin, and Leslie Hope, among others. As always, this movie will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, go check it out, then come back and listen to the podcast. But before we get into it, let's run the trailer.
This country is in deep trouble, people. This country is rotten to the core, and somebody better do something about it. I want you to take your hand out of that bowl of Fritos, throw away your National Enquirer, and pick up the phone. Go ahead, pick it up, hold it up to your face, and dial 555-TALK. Open your mouth and tell me what we're going to do about the mess this country's in. Talk Radio. It's the last neighborhood in town. People just don't talk to each other anymore. Let's go to the first caller. Night Talk, Agnes. Yeah.
I love Lucy. Now, why don't they make more of them?
Those shows are ancient, Agnes. Lucille Ball must be at least 105 years old. The rest of the cast is dead.
Harry, Metrowave's going to be picking up the show starting Monday night. Link it to a national feed.
We have a very special guest with us. Kent is the classic American youth, energetic and resourceful, spoiled, perverse, and disturbed. Would you say that's an accurate description, Kent?
Barry, you should ask me if you want to have a guest on the show.
Why?
Because I'm the boss, Barry, that's why.
All you have to do is just be nice, okay?
Now, easy, Barry. You're part of the problem, you see.
I don't care what you think. No one does.
He's going down in flames, Dan.
So what?
You get the package and sent down to the station. See, if I were you, I'd have my pretty assistant give the police a call. Take the bomb squad about 10 minutes to get down
Bomb
there
squad?
to the
Why
station.
should I call a bomb squad? Tell me something. I'm curious. How do you dial a phone with a straitjacket on?
All right, guys, let me give you a quick synopsis. A rude, contemptuous talk show host becomes overwhelmed by the hatred that surrounds his program just before it goes national. All right, so I've got some opening thoughts on this one, just a couple of fun little facts. So in my mind, this movie is a snapshot of the late to mid 80s. And it explores the difference between freedom of speech and hate speech, obviously, and, the thin line between the two and, where it should be drawn. It's heavily influenced by shows like Morton Downey Jr., The Howard Stern Show, and a Denver show where the host Alan Berg was murdered in 1984, which triggered a book titled Talk to Death, written by Stephen Singular. And Bogosian was heavily influenced by this book, and it shows up in the plot of the movie for sure. Talk Radio cost $4 million to make, but it only grossed $3.5 million at the U.S. and Canadian box offices combined. And this was probably due to its limited release and only opening in a handful of theaters. And this movie was actually shoehorned in between Wall Street Platoon, and then it was this, and then Born on the 4th of July. So as you can imagine, Oliver Stone took a huge pay cut to do this one because he just believed in it. So that's pretty much what I got on this as opening thoughts. Tony, do you have anything you want to add?
I literally just got done watching it about 15 minutes ago, and watching it on its release at ATM. I remember I actually went to I believe it was the Nickelodeon Theater in Boston, which is no longer there.
Wow.
To see this because I heard about it and it just enthralled me. And seeing it at 18 and seeing it at 52, completely different outlook, viewpoints, everything. Like, this movie blew me away watching it tonight.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
so intense.
So intense. And it's funny because we're the exact same age. So same for me, seeing this at 18, like you said, you look at it completely differently than you do it, 52. Like, at 18, you're like, connecting with Kent. and at 52, you're like, man, he's a jerk to his wife. So, Dylan, what do you think?
As I said to you earlier today, what I thought was really interesting, and I'm sure as people can tell, my voice is not great. I've got a little bit of laryngitis here, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. But I found it really interesting how the topics of the day, war, murder, rape, drugs, it's the same stuff that's today. It was like, legitimately, you could have made that movie today and only changed a couple of words and everything would have resonated just as if it was back then. So it was very interesting to me how much the human race continues to do the same thing over and over again. And we always think, oh, it was so much worse or so much better or whatever. At the same time, it's really not. We're humans and we continue to do the same stupid shit,
Yeah. And we had a discussion, earlier about, freedom of speech and, how you can't really silence anybody because then you have to silence everybody. And, if it's not hurting anybody, then anybody should basically be able to say what they want, all groups, everybody. And, if it crosses the line and it is going to hurt somebody, that's where you have to say, you can't do that. But, it would be nice if, the law of nature was just, live and let live and everybody could kind of just accept each other, regardless of race, creed, or religion. And, so that's kind of where I stand on that. I'm sure you two do.
Well, there's also freedom of speech is the freedom to speak your mind and not like go to jail for it. But it's not, freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences for what you say.
That's
Correct.
what I was waiting to say. Exactly. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like you can be in the KKK and say all sorts of terrible things, but if people find out it's you and then your business goes under, well, sorry, freedom of speech doesn't cover that,
Absolutely. That's absolutely a great point. And, just right off the bat with us, just saying what we've said already, it shows how important this movie is and was, and, how it sparks conversation that, needs to be talked about, in my opinion. So, this is an important movie in my opinion, but let's get into it. So the movie opens with a sweeping shot of Dallas, Texas at night. It's set to the song Bad to the Bone. We hear the introduction for Dallas's #1 talk radio show, Night Talk, starring Barry Champlain. A car pulls into the station parking lot while a nefarious-looking stranger watches from his car smoking a cigarette. Next, we see the inner workings and dynamics of the radio station and the crew for Night Talk. We meet Stu the engineer, played by John C. McGinley, radio manager Dan, played by Alec Baldwin, Barry's producer/assistant, played by Leslie Hope, her name is Laura, Chuck Dietz, head VP in advertising for Metro Wave, played by John Pankow, and radio shock jock Barry Champlain, played by Eric Bogosian, who is on air winding up his listeners. Tony, why don't you take it?
It's such a great introduction because you literally are dropped into one of his shows. It's almost like a one take. He gets out of his car, he goes into the radio station, drops his jacket off, grabs the microphone, goes right in. It's a perfect introduction. The one thing I'm gonna geek out about this throughout. First of all, I could have easily done a commentary to this whole movie. Like, I have so many thoughts and so much appreciation for literally almost everything about this movie. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it all in an hour, even an hour and a half, because I'm just going to be such a fanboy for Oliver Stone's. And I apologize, I didn't look up who the cinematographer was, but his use of reflections and mirrors, and just everything about this movie has something amazing about, whether it's the dialogue, it's the characterizations, or the way it's shot and lit. Like, Tony, this movie is so over the top, beautiful to watch from a filmmaker appreciation point of view.
Yeah. Oh. Let me just stop real quick, because everything you just said, I said to Dylan in the car the other day driving home, like almost word for word. I am so with you on this, man. I was I was like chubbalicious during this movie. So go ahead, continue, because I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, it's just we're dropped right in, and he instantly picks up the phone, and for lack of a better term, I mean, it's impossible not to. There's just so much I want to get into. The characterizations of every different caller. You have the sweet little old people who are calling in just to have someone to talk to. You have these racist and hate-filled, attackers who are just verbally abusing him and threatening him over the phone, whether it's because of his ethnicity or his liberal viewpoints. And this is the first thing I noted. The first difference I noticed from when I was 18 to now is that watching the first 10 minutes of this movie, seeing him interact with the people, I thought he was conservative. Like his viewpoints were the first intro to him was he's very Republican is the only way, the descriptor I'm going for. Right. And then when I was a kid, I'm like, well, wait, he was the one who used to tell it like it is. Did my viewpoints change that much? And then I realized as it goes on, you see what he really is, but it's very much the closed-minded, this is how I see it, his point of view goes, because he has the hang-up button. That's what it comes down to. Even if he agrees with you, he's going to insult you and he's going to hang up on you because that's his job. Yes. And that's his ratings. So whether someone's being nice to him, he might get a few smart-ass comments in, but it's never an appreciative interaction until later on in the movie, which I'm sure we'll get to. But the first introduction to him, he's abrasive, he's abusive, he's unsympathetic, and he's completely over the top characterization of when you say shock jock, that was it. Oh yeah. His black leather jacket, his stubble, the way he drops his coat, lights up a cigarette, and jumps right into the attack. It's a perfect, what you're dealing with now. That's right.
Yeah. And Delyn, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to add, but I really did appreciate the interesting shots, like the reel-to-reel tape and like the lights coming on, and like they're just like little things that like take you from one place to another, but it really kind of takes you into that world. And I thought they did a good job with that. And I also did want to just say that the cinematographer for the movie was Robert Richardson, and he ended up doing a ton of stuff with Oliver Stone. He did Born on the 4th of July, he did The Doors, he did JFK, Natural Born Killers. So he's got quite a lot of he also did a bunch of Scorsese stuff, including Casino. So just
the crossfades and the light up, light down. I mean, the way to get an entire cast into a one-man show in one shot is a reflection of him in the studio of 10 people. And all I have to do is light up the studio and everybody all of a sudden shows up in the same shot. Beautiful way to do it. Perfect way of seeing his attack, their reactions to it. No questions asked. What everybody is thinking in that room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Tony, very creative.
I couldn't agree with you more on this opening. And, I fell in love with the way this movie looked immediately from, seeing this stranger in the parking lot, which giving it this mystery movie, horror movie feel. You've got, these slow motion shots of cigarettes being lit and red lights and reel to reels. And, and Barry Champlain, this character is so smart because he's antagonizing these people and he's winding them up, but he's so smart. Like, the way he comes up with these stories off his hip, like we're going to get into one about, the concentration camp. It's like, he's making this shit up as he's going along, but he is freaking like, it's genius. And
he's sharp.
He's sharp as a tack. And
but he's also very well read because when they call in and they're citing their hate speeches, he's like, oh, I'm very familiar with that book. It's written by this person. And this is where it takes place. Am I right about this? And the person's just like, yep, I'm just counting lies,
Yeah.
So he's very well read. He is informed. He's just an asshole.
Yeah. And that's a perfect example of this character, Barry Champlain. Like you said, he's got an answer for every question and he's not going to be caught off guard by anybody throughout this movie. And this character could not, in my opinion, have been played by anybody but Eric Bogosian. And had it been played by anybody but Eric Bogosian, this movie doesn't play as good as it did. And who they really wanted for this part was Dustin Hoffman. Nope. And I love Dustin Hoffman, but not as Barry Champlain. So
if this movie was made 10 years, because every movie I watch, I do that. I'm like, who else could play this character maybe differently or better? I would appreciate it. The only person that came to mind that could pull this off is Philip Seymour Hoffman. Watching
Interesting.
him in Almost Famous, it's the same kind of just he's just disenfranchised, he's angry, he's sick of everything, but he does have the heart in there. He just has it so protected and it's so scarred up with emotional turmoil. He doesn't let it go. So that's the only person of everybody I can think of that I think could have pulled this off. But no, Bogosian, perfect.
Yeah, I could see it, but it wouldn't have been what Bogosian brings to this man. Some of these facial expressions, he didn't have to say a word, and I was sold.
Yeah.
I also would like to point out at this point that Eric Bogosian got the role of Daniel in the new Interview with a Vampire miniseries because of talk radio. They wanted him. Like they literally went out of their way to get him because of how much they loved what he had done with talk radio. So it continues to get him work to this day.
Well, he was in Uncut Gems as well, which is another one long anxiety attack kind of a movie.
Yeah.
It's like everything he does just stresses me out. But again,
I thought it was very good. And, it's also should be mentioned that Oliver Stone did help write this screenplay, which is what, ultimately lured him into directing the movie. All right. So during a break in the show, Dan introduces Barry to Chuck and informs him starting Monday, Night Talk will be broadcast nationwide. Barry seems put off by the news and takes to the air to inform his listeners while sending a passive-aggressive message to Chuck and Metrowave saying he won't soften his touch and to take it or leave it. He then fields a call from an unhinged, threatening listener, Chet, who will continue to raise the stakes throughout the movie. He also fields a call from an 18-year-old Kent who claims his 17-year-old girlfriend is overdosed. Dylan, what'd you think of the scene?
It really is setting up very quickly that a lot of people don't like him. And with good reason. He's antagonistic. And what's the tagline about him? The guy you love to hate.
Man you love to hate.
Yeah. So like you said, the stakes and the anxiety kind of increases as you watch the film. It goes up and up each time he takes a phone call, really. Yeah. And, I was definitely kind of rolling my eyes a little bit at Kent just because I've known a lot of those people. But it like I said, just every time he takes a phone call, every time he hangs up on somebody, it's almost like you're moving one step closer to the ultimate moment of the movie,
Yeah. Tony, what'd you think?
No, same thing. It's the fact that every time you hit the like, Chet, you're on the line, and there's a pause, and you wait to hear what's on the other end, and it's always even more chilling when it's just a soft-spoken. Like Chet is disturbingly soft-spoken and very sure. He's very like yours is coming. It's like it's all knowing. Even in his bullshit that he tries to give him, it's still chilling and threatening because it's not a raving maniac, which is like, oh, you can easily dismiss that. It's someone who's calculated, cold, and has a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as Kent goes, we all lived that life. It is what it is, and you can kind of see through. Whenever you get a kid calling and it's like butts, it's like you're gonna have those. But I think it's
that was almost like a Baba Booey moment.
Very much so. So I mean, that was the one you kind of went, oh, okay. You roll your eyes at this is what we're going to be dealing with as well. But of those two, Chet. Each time Chet called in, it like you said, it just upped and like it tightened and tightened. Something's going to happen.
Yeah, and there's so many sub stories going on too. With the rapist, and we're going to get some calls from some other people here too that are unhinged, like the child beater, and they're all very calm and threatening. Like sweet dreams. These guys are threatening.
And again, I'm going to be very, I hate to say stereotypical, but it's like I lived in Texas for 2 years. They're very convinced their ways are the right way.
Yeah.
And as we know in current times, Texas doesn't agree with a lot of liberal ideas, we'll say. Yeah. So hearing all that, like Dylan said in the beginning, it kept calling me back like this could be made this year.
Yeah.
Like how frightening the hate speech, the topics they discussed of isolation, through COVID. Like the one woman was like, well, I don't ever go anywhere. I'm just happy to be home. It's like, what's wrong with me? It's like people doubting themselves because they're isolated, or, you know, the drugs that are coming in, and all of the things that were on the last 2 elections came up in this movie in 1988.
Yeah, and
So it's like,
legalizing drugs. And we just started legalizing pot places, but he was talking about it back then.
Yeah, it would have saved so much money. Look what's happened to the literally the states, the cities that have done it. The taxes have been amazing. The cities are doing amazingly well. But again, side note, but this movie was so far ahead of its time in the thinking and projecting what the issues. I can't even say resolutions, because nothing ever got resolved. It was just raising these issues into the public eye that as he said, I'm here to say the things you don't want to say. You need me. Yeah. I'm the piece of shit that you don't want to be. So you need me here to do your dirty work for you.
What's funny about this movie, Tony, is, so being a movie lover, I have a website that I go to that basically just has a catalog of movies that you could listen to. And I listen to talk radio at work all the time. And it's funny because, you know, the banter between Barry and his listeners is so organic and it feels so real that I'll listen to the movie because I feel like I'm listening to like really savory, good talk radio. And it's like highlights and the best of the best. Yeah. And I think the way they pulled that off is it's genius. It's amazing. It doesn't feel fake, right?
Not a bit. And just because I have, you know, older friends and actually some relatives who listen to talk radio back in the day when this was real. Like this was this is based on reality. This isn't just like, oh, Howard Stern, we always talks about boobs and sex, and it's like this used to be a real thing. Like we don't have a lot of it anymore. We have a lot more podcasts where you actually have to like look for them and subscribe to them. But this used to be on like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, call in and talk shit.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, when you think about everything that he's dealing with, this was real stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
It's even more disturbing.
Definitely. And you said that you lived in Texas. So something I thought was pretty cool about the way they set this up was they could have very easily put this movie like in New York, you know, one of the bigger, you know, hubs, LA. But I don't think it would have worked as well, you know, because you're in Texas and, you know, you got a lot of, you know, good old boys and, you know, and I think that, you know, you put this Jewish shock jock, you know, spinning these really controversial topics, you know, at this, you know, late night audience in Texas, and you know, you're going to get fireworks. And I thought that it really worked, and it was a great setting for the movie.
Completely. Yeah. I mean, aside from like a Mormon village or something like that, I mean, everywhere else just has at least some leniency, some liberalization, some sort of at least understanding of the other side. There's always going to be extremes on both sides. I'll never deny that. But yeah, you go to Texas, you know what you're dealing with.
Right. All right. So next we get some exposition between Laura and Stu, revealing Laura is in fact sleeping with Barry. Barry calls his ex-wife to tell her Night Talk is going national and he would like her to fly out to be at the first show and support him. She agrees. A distraught Debbie calls, and we see the caring side of Barry as he comforts her. This is followed by a second call from Chet, informing Barry he has sent him a bomb. Barry opens the package live on the air to find a Nazi flag, a dead rat, and a letter saying he knows what he looks like and where he lives, thus raising the stakes. Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to talk for just a minute about, you know, him and the ex-wife, you know, because it's like this woman has left his life and has moved on. Obviously, she's got Lou and she's doing her own thing. And he is going to lean heavy on her and be like, hey, I need you to come here and hold my hand for this, essentially. And I almost thought that was a precursor to the discussion with, what was the caller, Debbie?
Yeah.
You know, because that it's almost a weakness, you know, like, because he's a guy that doesn't seem like he wants to show weakness to people, but he wants her to come and be there. And it's like, that's almost a weakness. Like he's almost like the kind of guy that's like, I don't need anybody or anything, but there he is calling her and asking her to come. So I thought that was interesting. And I'm not exactly sure what his reasoning is for wanting her there other than just quote unquote support.
Yeah, we're going to get into that because I have some questions about that as well, but yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that was what I really focused on the most, because that was a very interpersonal connection that he has. And it's it shows that he's not just this angry, screaming guy, you know?
Yeah. Tony, what'd you think of this scene?
No, that's pretty much where I was going to go with it. The fact this is the first time we see Barry vulnerable. You know, it's like he put up the bravado to Alec Baldwin in an awesome role, by the way. Alec Baldwin, his boss. You know, I this is my show. I do what I want. They can take me or leave me. And you know, to the other guy who was I forget his name, but who also was in another awesome movie, To Live and Die in L.A. But I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But to call his wife right after that, the whole bravado of like, this is my show. I do what I want on it. You can't tell me nothing. Ellen, I need you to be here. I need somebody I could trust here. Literally his words, I need someone I could trust. He literally has no trust for anyone else in his life, whether it's his work producer, the person he's sleeping with, or his partner, who has pretty much been with him since the beginning of his career. None of them, he doesn't trust any of them. And even, you know, another amazing performance by John C. McGinley, who's never been bad in anything, as this very matter of fact, very no bullshit, I'm going to call a spade, you're an asshole, John McGinley. He's just amazing in this. But yeah, he's like, I'm here to do my job. You do your job. Everybody stay out of my way. You're screwing things up. I'm going to tell you. But that's it. He knows the relationship with him. But the only person who's ever had his back and tried to steer him in the right direction was his wife, his ex-wife. And that's literally in that 2 minute, not even 2 minute scene, you got that dynamic that this is the one person he can go to, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because she's got to fly out from another city to get there. So for him to ask that, and you know, she's like, well, I don't know if I can. He's like, all right, you don't worry about it. Don't come out. Like he tried to cancel because he realizes he exposed himself too much. And then
yeah, and you know, you got her husband in the background, you know, this is causing problems. But you know, selfishly, he doesn't care, you know, hey, tell him to shut up, tell him it's me, you know. And you know, she's willing to get into it with her husband for him. You know, she's still, you know, it's not been closed yet, even though she's moved on and she's remarried. You know, she still has a place in her heart for him at this point in the movie anyway. So this scene for me, what really stood out, and you know, again, it goes to the directing and the screenplay, or the screenplay of this, is he gets this package, and you know, Chet tells him, I know you're looking at it. I know it's right there. Tell your pretty little assistant to call the bomb squad. You know, you think I'm going to call the bomb squad? Some pinhead calls in? No. And he's saying, you know, you call anybody and I'm walking off. And he's going to open this package, even though it could explode in his face. And what I thought was really great was while he's opening this package, you've got this suspense building. But he's talking to this woman on the line about how she's afraid of her garbage disposal.
Yeah.
Right. So he's treading a line of like, you know, this comedy relief that we need right here while we're in one of the most dramatic scenes in the movie. And wow, did it play really great for me because it was kind of pulling me in two directions. And I just thought it was really good. And, you know, to see what was inside the box, obviously extremely disturbing.
Yeah.
And again, all done in a reflection. He holds up the Nazi flag in the reflection, and we're looking into the studio, seeing his producer like putting his hands in his hair, like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" Like, you know, it's again so masterfully done. No cut back and forth, no swipes. Literally one scene, and you see everyone's reaction.
Yeah, it's shot beautifully. It's, you know, we're gonna get some other scenes that are like, you know, just really good. We'll get into it, but yeah, really, really good. So the next scene, I love this scene. So Barry's at a basketball game to be a guest speaker. Here we see the polarizing effect he has on the citizens of Dallas. Some love him, but most hate him. And he is relentlessly booed by the crowd. Next morning, Barry is laying next to his assistant Laura in bed when he receives a call from Dan to set up a breakfast between him and Chuck. Barry refuses the invitation before receiving a call from his ex-wife, who was waiting for him at the airport. Barry lies and tells her he hadn't forgotten and he's on his way. Like the true narcissist asshole he is, he asks Laura to straighten up the place before she leaves. Barry picks up his wife, Ellen, played by Ellen Green, at the airport. There's a ton of exposition and flashback scenes giving us the origin of Barry Champlain, going from a suit salesman to a shock jock, and the demise of his marriage stemming from infidelity and putting the show ahead of his marriage. Tony, what'd you think was going on here?
Oh, there's just so much here. Like I said, this whole discussion could be like an hour.
Oh, unpack it.
Jesus. So the phone call, it's the. Dylan, you go first. I got.
Okay, give yourself a second.
I love it.
Okay, I'm going to back it up to the basketball game. And the
Okay.
reason why I'm going to back it up to the basketball game is because the woman that throws the drink in his face is Anna Thompson. And she goes on to star in, well, doesn't star in, but she shows up in The Crow. She's Darla from The Crow.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yep. And also Michael Wincott, who we will run into this movie later, is also from The Crow. So they were both in both movies, even though they didn't share any scenes. And I thought that was kind of interesting because the minute she came on the screen, I was like, I know her.
Yeah.
And you hear her voice in several of the calls.
Yes.
Too.
Yes. Her voice is in several of the calls. And so it's Michael Wincott.
Yes.
They both did voices. But yeah, so wow. Barry, the suit salesman. Whew, that was quite the look.
I loved it. So Howard Stern.
Yeah. I thought that the scene where his wife catches him cheating was really sad, and it was a bummer because you already know that this is the only person he cares about really and cares that he can trust, and that's what he did to her. And that was disappointing to see that he kind of let it get there,
Yeah. Well, I felt like he kind of knew his intentions when he, asked her to, basically join the show. And she said, no, it might mess up our marriage. And he goes, fuck our marriage. And did you just say fuck our marriage?
Yeah.
So you could see there that, he was a career oriented guy and he was going to put his career ahead of Ellen.
Yeah. But cheating with like girls, that it wasn't even like it was like he was having an affair with his boss or something.
No.
Just cheating with some girls. That's not really putting his show above everything else.
Well, he was partying with Stu.
Well, true.
Tony, I got a quick question on the basketball scene for you, and not to jump ahead, but there's lots of people during this movie that threatened to kill Barry, and we know it's a guy. No, not to spoil this, but we know it's a guy. Do we see the guy at the basketball game? Because I kind of think we do.
I searched for him tonight because I knew what he looked like. So I think we did, but he wasn't one of the ones that came up to him.
It's not the guy with the ponytail, the big fat guy that asks for his autograph?
Yeah, that's him. I apologize. That is him.
Yeah, okay, because I thought so too.
Yeah, he had the picture at the end. Again, getting ahead, but he had the same picture at the end. But,
okay, yeah. So I thought so because I was trying to find it and I can't find it anywhere. You can Google it. Who's the killer? It's not out there. But I thought that they did a really nice job when he's asking for the autograph. You almost can't recognize him. I recognize him because of the ponytail, but he's like being very nice and smiley. And then, he's like spitting venom at the end. So it almost looks like two different guys, but I think it's that guy for the basketball game.
And I think that's why they freeze frame him at the end for like a good 3 or 4 seconds. It's actually a freeze frame on it to make you understand it. But
they close up on his teeth. So I think you might get a shot of that same broken tooth during the basketball game, but I didn't go back and look because I rented the movie. Unfortunately, I couldn't find my copy. But with the new format, Tony, go ahead and unpack this because, we're already like halfway through. So let it rip.
Pretty much that basketball scene as just a whole, it added reality to what you're already feeling. We only have people's opinions of him. We see him being an asshole to people he works with, but you know what? We're all assholes to people we work with too, but we're not assholes.
Yeah.
And like they're going to think we are, but for the most part, we're decent people. You see everybody, with the exception of one person in the stands, cheering him, booing him, except for that one guy. Like It was so uncomfortable. And watching Darla come up to him and say to his face, like, you're just a pathetic, evil person. I really feel bad for you. It's like laying it all out. And he's so caught off guard by, it's almost like he's dumbfounded that, like, why would these people do this to me? Yeah. Like, he's so narcissistic in the public eye.
Let me interject something quickly here. It's funny because she, being a drunk luss as she is, she's one of the only characters in this movie that actually gets him off his game for a second.
Yeah.
And another thing I want to say is this crowd, they all are booing him like passionately, like again with Venom, but that means they all listen to him.
Well, that's some of the listeners say that. So, you know, when he finally has his breakdown at the end, I don't want to get too far ahead to it. When he finally has his breakdown at the end, you know, why do you people listen? Like, what do you like about the show? Well, I don't know. What do you like about the show? I want to hear what you're going to say next, which is what people literally which is what people literally said Howard Stern.
Correct.
It's like the ratings are in, they're up. Well, what about the people who didn't like him? They listened too. Why are they listening? They want to see who's going to say next.
They listen twice as long, is what he says.
To complain about it.
Yeah,
So it's
true
like,
enough.
but seeing someone in person who's such a hateful, nasty person, of course you're going to boo it. I do have to admit that, like, you know, this was at a college basketball game. I'm sorry, there would have been at least a handful of pockets here and there of people, like, of college assholes cheering him.
Oh, there were.
There weren't.
No.
There was one guy, the guy who asked him for his autograph that wasn't the killer. The tall, geeky guy. He's literally the only person in the whole stands that was cheering him. Everyone else was doing the, you know, down, down, boo. And because I watched for it, because I'm like, I wanted to find something unrealistic here, but it wasn't. It's like that was the only part of this whole movie. They're like, no, I can nitpick that.
Did you guys also notice how claustrophobic that scene was, considering they're in a basketball gymnasium?
Yeah.
Like, everybody that talked to him was like on top of him.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, like, I was watching it. I wanted to push the people away. And it was like, I clearly think they did that to give you that feeling of discomfort.
Yeah. There's a line that he says that I stole, and I've been using it my whole life, is okay, back in your cage. I freaking love that. And let me ask you, because Tony, there's 3 callers that I think could be the killer. So you got the guy that threatens him for talking about Jericho Pizza. I don't think it's him, because, you know, he sounds like he's like a very Italian guy to me. I mean, that's just kind of what I got.
The family.
Right, the family. Then you got the caller that's, you know, beating his kids. And, you know, he says, you know, I know who you are and I know where you live. Sweet dreams.
Yeah.
And then you've got Chet. So those are your 3 possible killers. Which one do you think it is?
Oh, it's totally Chet.
You think it's Chet?
Also, don't forget the woman at the end. Obviously, we know it's not a woman.
Yeah.
But the woman who goes off on the revelations speech at the end, right before he has his complete undoing, was that monologue. I want to learn that monologue. It was so dark and foreboding. But yeah, I feel it's the guy who beats his kids. Anyone who has like a, you know, psychology 101, they're not going to stand up to an adult. As soon as they're faced with challenge from another adult, they're going to back down. Anyone who beats their kids beats kids because that's all they could beat. They're weak people, you know.
Yep.
And the other one, no, it's Chet.
It's Chet.
I mean, and then you have the 4th caller, which is the one that recommended the book of all you Zionistic, you know, people. They're all, you have your comeuppance coming. You know, that's the 5th one, actually. I mean, you had a library of them here, but Chet's the only one that sent the package, that got physical, that, you know, knew everything about him.
It's Chet.
The others made vapid threats, random threats. He was the one who's like, get your pretty assistant. I know she's there.
Right.
He's watching because he's on the roof.
Yeah, true. So I had a funny little fact too about it. So, you know, during his jock days, he says he's going to torture his listeners by playing the Bee Gees' Saturday Night Fever 10 times in a row. But in reality, there is no such song, Saturday Night Fever. And he actually plays Disco Inferno, which did appear on the soundtrack for Saturday Night Fever. So I thought that was kind of funny.
That was good. Yeah. The whole flashback was done so well.
It was.
You know, his in, you know, being a suit salesman, chance meeting, throwing him a co-worker, one of the local disc jockeys who decided, hey, you got a good voice, come on my show. And he literally stole the show away.
Stole it.
Just in a complete dick way. Not even like, you know, undermining him. He literally rode over him, which shows you this was him from the beginning. This is who he's always been. It just needed an outlet. And
although you see, I'm jumping ahead now, but you see a juxtaposition of that with when Kent comes on and Kent takes over and starts yelling. Like, obviously Kent doesn't do the job that he did when he was with the old guy, but he basically almost does the same thing. He steps in and starts talking,
Well,
and they grab him and throw him out.
yeah, the difference is Barry Champlain is a radio savant and Chet
Yeah.
is a fucking idiot.
Goon. Yeah, but it was very interesting because it's basically the same exact thing. Like he's having a conversation with a person and Barry jumps in, and then Barry's having a conversation with a person and Kent jumped in. So it was almost the exact same thing, even though it wasn't he obviously wasn't as good.
Yeah. And I love that the owner of the up and ups at that radio station, were able to identify how talented, and raw Barry was. And, even though the Star Shock jock, is basically like, you're all done. I love when he has to eat crow and be like, my boss wants to talk to you.
Yeah. and
really
and
good.
the, well, watching the interaction with him and his wife, Ellen, all we've had to this point is just like aggression. The person, there's such a strong personality. Everybody's got an agenda. Barry's is talking over people. His girlfriend produced, I want to be heard. I want to advance my career. Everybody's got something. Ellen's the only soft-spoken person who just wants to be good. She just wants to be happy. She wants him to be happy. And they got the perfect person to play that because she's so soft-spoken. And she's a complete 180 from him, who's loud, boisterous. It's funny, when I was watching the movie, my wife was like, he's got I know the volume's down, but the baby's sleeping, but I can hear his voice down the hall because he's got such a booming voice. And she was such a juxtaposition to who he was. And watching him just destroy her was painful. It's like, there are a few cringeworthy things to get in. Watching her put together what's going on when she walks through the door and, Stu's there with the other girl and she's like, she doesn't want to believe. You can see it, like her delivery, her body language. She doesn't want to believe it. Here comes Barry. Here's the girl down the stairs. It's like, you feel it. You feel it in your gut. It's like, this is just fucking terrible. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And her performance is so good. I mean, I just want to gush about this movie so much because there's not one bad performance in this whole crew. And everybody did their job so good when they had to. I mean, obviously people 180 and people, you see the growth in their characters throughout the film, but when they hit their marks, man, it's fucking golden.
Yeah, it's all golden. And if Night Talk was a real show, I'd be listening.
I can't do it's like trying to, and I hate if I'm going to offend anybody out there, but it's like talking to a Trump supporter, man. I just can't do it. It drives me literally. I could talk to a rock and have more.
I could listen to talk radio, Night Talk for hours. And like I said, I listen to this movie as if it was talk radio. And I'm not saying, of course, I don't, agree or identify with, these horrific topics, but I just find it so entertaining. I mean, the way Bogosian plays this character, it draws me like freaking a moth to a light. I just love listening to him talk.
See, as much as I do enjoy cringeworthy humor and I do stop at car crashes because it's human curiosity, but there's something about it. I'll watch all the movies all day. I'll watch the worst thing you want to put in front of me. I'm going to watch it because I'm curious. But once I know something's real, then it's a different ballgame for me. I can't do it. And knowing that there are real people, in a way, I'm like Kent. It's like Kent doesn't want to know about the world. Kent doesn't want to hear about the world issues. He wants to party. He wants to do his thing. I am blissfully ignorant and knowing there are people out there, but I don't want to experience it because it makes me sad for the world.
Yeah, and you should be sad for the world, especially where it's at right now, because it's pretty effed up. All right, so back at the radio station, Barry is told by Chuck and Dan that the national feed will be delayed for a couple of weeks. Barry takes to the air with a chip on his shoulder and tells his listeners the national feed is delayed and that tonight anything goes. Hit me with your best shot. After Barry gets into it with a Holocaust denier, Kent calls back and confesses he's been messing with him and made up the whole story. Barry invites him into the studio just to spite Dan and Chuck. After overhearing his wife talking about him to her new husband, Barry goes back on the air. He's obviously upset and takes a call from Joe, who threatens him and informs him he knows where he lives. next he gets a call from John, a guy claiming to be a serial rapist on the edge of committing another rape. Here we get our first look at Kent, played by Michael Wincott, a crazy, whacked-out rocker. After some on-air banter, Kent reaches into his jacket and pulls out a camera, snapping some shots before being rushed out of the studio for the fear that it could have been a gun. Knowing Barry is going down in flames, Ellen phones in pretending to be a listener, Cheryl Ann, with a softball call to get him back on track. He's absolutely horrible to her during the call, and she finally leaves for good. Delynn?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Each
I
one
mean,
could be 20 minutes.
yeah, I mean, we'll start with Ellen. It's like, it's so heartbreaking. You know, she's still got feelings for him. She still cares about him. And he basically takes a crap on her head. It's like, oh my God, like just watching it is like painful. It's painful.
Yeah.
And of course you've got Kent, who's absolutely completely out of his mind. And he does a great job with it. Michael Wincott does a wonderful job with it. He is completely bizarre and strange and exactly what you would expect him to be, you know?
Oh, man, I love this character. Tony, what do you think? Take us through it.
Excuse me.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, it's Kent is who I liked the most my first time seeing it through, because he was just so, again, over the top caricature of the metal partier of 1988, and he was played to perfection by Michael Wincott, which if you look at him now, it's like, that's not Michael. It can't be Michael Wincott. And it's totally Michael Wincott.
Yeah.
And he's just so ADHD. He can't focus on the questions. He's looking around the studio. He's drinking his Pepsi, got the sunglasses on, wants to be a rock star, the whole thing. And Barry's just throwing these. So what do you think about the drug trade? What do you think about the Middle East? It's like, I don't really think about that, Barry. He's literally has no idea, because he doesn't want to deal with reality that that Barry's given him, and it's bringing him down to the point that when we hear one of the callers calling in and saying they're having a hard time, that's what finally makes Chet lose it.
Yeah.
Say, Yo, get a fucking straight razor and cut your fucking wrists. And it's like, that's when they scored him up, because he can't deal with reality, which is where basically I look at Kent as Bogosian and Stone's personification of where they felt most of America was
at that time.
At that time. You're closing your eyes to the problem. All you want to hear is girls just want to have fun. All you want to do is watch Purple Rain. All you want to do is stick your head in the sand and not deal with where the wars and things we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And they made it such a characterization, like, oh, we laugh at that, but then you stop and think about it, like, all he wanted to do was just party. He didn't want to look at any of the bad stuff. That was everybody, and is everybody at some point in your life. And yeah, they set it up as he's being dragged out, reaching in, and there's actually an audible click, like he's cocking a gun when he reaches in, and he pulls out, his hands a blur, and he snaps a picture, which could have been the flash of a gun until you see it's a camera. It was done so well, but that's just the threat that they're setting up and have set up. Like, you don't know what's coming next. That's literally the theme of this entire movie is you don't know. You press a button, you don't know what's coming next.
Right. And it's funny because, when we first see him, we're seeing his reflection of Kent in the glass while Barry's talking. And he's talking about some really dark shit. And Kent is laughing. He's loving it. He's so out of touch, and again, it's that perfect thing that they did when they wrote the screenplay and shot it. We're hearing horror and we're seeing this kid laughing and thinking it's cool and liking it.
Yeah.
And, I thought that was really pretty deep. And, in 1988, I was 18.
Yeah.
Sadly, I was Kent, that was me. I was a fucking idiot. And they nailed it, man. I mean, wardrobe, I knew this guy. I hung out with this guy, I mean, this is 1988, 18-year-old average kid. I mean, Kent, fuck, I loved it.
It was great.
And so let's talk about Ellen a little bit here and what happens. So
let me just jump back in.
Go ahead.
I apologize. The rapist call was such a hard. Again, 18, it was like, all right, I see what they're going for. At 52, that was wrenching.
Wrenching.
It was so hard to listen to that I'm sitting there going like, oh my God. And everyone in the studio was like, they show his producer, they show the business suits, and they're just watching him like, where are you going to go with this? Are you going to be the asshole who's going to tell him to go do it? Because the one thing you notice, he says, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. He never says, don't do it.
Yeah.
I kept waiting for it. And it's so hard to listen to this person begging and pleading and crying on the phone. Like, I don't want to do it. I already have her picked out. And just like, what is it about her? What's it about a piece of pumpkin pie? What's a piece of apple pie? You just want to do it. It's an urge I can't control. And it was so scary.
It was.
It was literally, you're listening to someone admit this is going to happen. And then they hang up. And it's like, now he's going to do it. It's like terrifying.
Yeah. It was some really, really strong writing. And the guy, I don't know who did it, if it was, Kent did it or whoever was doing the voice, but you could feel the desperation. Talk about some really heavy, dark, shit they're talking about in this movie.
Yeah. All right, so on to Ellen. Sorry.
Yeah. So my thoughts on Ellen here, I thought this was really interesting because, he asks her to come down for this support, right? And, he's fucking sleeping when she gets to the airport. He doesn't even remember she's coming. He comes and he gets her. He brings her in, so he's got her hanging out with this little, fuck partner, his producer in the same studio, showing neither of them really any respect. And, he hears her talking to her husband and, quite honestly, she's not being flattering when she's talking to the husband. She doesn't know he can hear her. And he hears kind of how she really thinks about him at this point. The guy is a dented can and she's telling her husband as much. And I feel like this is why he gets so, just horrid on her. He's almost telling her during this phone call, he's cutting her loose. He's saying, fuck you. Go back to your husband. I
want to jump in here real quick. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do not believe that she actually feels that way about him. I believe that that's what she tells Lou, so Lou will back off.
Totally.
I believe that she actually loves Barry still, and she's not sure how she's going to break that news to Lou eventually.
See, it's funny. I saw it totally differently. I thought that, after being stood up at the airport and, just basically treated like a secondhand citizen once again, I feel like at this point, she is there for closure. And, she's there to just basically say, you can't keep calling me back. And, this is pretty much going to be it. And I think he kind of gets that feeling. And that's why, instead of being hurt, because like Tony said, this guy's got a big ego and he's opened himself up again. Instead of being hurt and letting her say, this is it, I won't be coming back again, he tells her, you're a piece of shit. Go back to your husband. You're a loser. He's a loser. Fuck off.
Yeah, well, I think he was hurt because he thought, he believes that that's what she really thinks, but I don't believe that that was the truth. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I don't even think he believes that. That's why he ran out at the end of the call to go find her to basically say, look, I screwed up. It's like, oh, did you leave? Yep. And I don't blame her one bit. It's like that whole interaction, like the phone call beforehand, the last thing she says, she's like, well, just think of it as like, I'm seeing a sick relative, and that's when Barry walks away. He's like, oh, that's what you think of me. And, but at the same time, during their day together, because we got that little before and after the flashback, we got their interaction. She's like, yeah, you drove me crazy, but of course I love you. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. They rebonded, reconnected, and he thought things were really good until he heard that. Now, I don't think he thinks of her as a liar. That's the thing, is like, she's never lied to him. He has no reason to think of that. So when she called in as Cheryl Ann, which they made a point to show, that was what got his radio station going in the early years. Cheryl Ann call. That was the point of Cheryl Ann calling in. She said to Alec Baldwin, it's like, he's dying out there. He needs somebody. He needs somebody to help him. So she gave him the whole story. It's like, I have feelings for my ex-husband. I still love him. Well, don't you love your new husband? Of course I love him, but I like him as a friend. Nothing's ever been as good as my ex-husband. And that's when he just explodes, because he's got the ego. Even if
Right.
and the thing is, he knows it's all true, and he knows he's in a position where he has to, if he breaks down right there, his personality, his radio personality, his personal life, everything is gone. Barry
Right.
Champlain is not there. It's back to Barry Goldworth, so whatever his real name was. That's who he is again. And he doesn't want to let the persona go. But he does love Ellen. I believe Ellen does love him. So she bared her soul to him, and he shit all over her. Like it was one of those like, oh my God, you suck.
Yeah,
and
but
watching that scene, it's like, ugh.
But like you said, he knows she's not a liar. He caught her in a very, in a very private moment with her new husband saying, this guy is sick. He's like, I feel like when she got there, it reminded her, like it all flooded back of why she left him originally. He's now, he shoehorned his wife and his girlfriend into the same studio. He left her at the airport. He's telling the other girl, clean up these fuck sheets while I go pick up my wife. I mean, he's a piece of shit. And I feel like, she got back there and she said, this is why we're not married anymore. Like, yeah, it's romantic looking back and being like, oh, this is the love of my life. But how good was it? And I feel like he caught her in a very private moment saying, what she really thinks of him at this point on this day. She's saying, this guy's sick. He's a dented can. I'll be coming home. And I think that he may have been nervous that, she had finally just seen him for what he was and had enough. And he was going to get the dump. And he wanted to put it on her.
Maybe.
But he does tell Stu at the end, again, getting ahead of ourselves, but he tells Stu at the end, I'm going to go to a hotel and try to talk to her. He's like, and Stu's like, that's what you should do.
Well, because he's a narcissist, and he also doesn't want to let that go. That's why he's calling her and forcing her to come back, even though she's married to this guy. It's a power play. He's saying, you're still going to run back to me every time I say, come. But, this is great. This is what I love about movies, and I love about talking to it with, like-minded people is, we all kind of saw it differently, and I think that's great movie making,
Yeah.
So let's not gloss over this amazing story he makes up to the Holocaust denier.
Oh, yeah.
When he's saying, I went to this concentration camp and, I saw this little shiny thing and I picked it up. It was a Star of David and I knew I shouldn't have kept it, but I do. And I hold it when I'm talking to, people like you, and he's making this up as he's going along and it's so powerful. And he's saying, it's right here on my console, which obviously we can see it's not. And I thought this again, man, just wow, right?
It shows what a great liar he is.
What a great liar he is, but also how he's just able to spin these tales on the radio and sound so genuine.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got that story at his fingertips.
Yeah. I mean, and what a great story it was, right?
Yeah.
I mean, holy shit, man. Again, these powerful scenes where, they're taking us through this, what it must have been like to have been a child and, been torn from your, experiencing horrors and, and really calling this listener out for being just like, just horrible. And it was just really great.
What I found interesting too is that, Barry's Jewish and obviously the topic of religion comes up because when you're in Dallas, it's a very Christian area, and you have like the woman that has the revelation talk with him and you have the Zionists talk thing. And then also Jericho Pizza. Like,
yeah,
why would they name it Jericho Pizza? Like, that's a biblical name. The walls of Jericho. It was like involved in like the March of the Israelites. So it's like, it's interesting to me that they chose that name specifically, you know?
Yeah, and he gets the call from the woman he insulted earlier. I got this a little wrong when I was writing this up, when I said, he's showing sympathy towards the woman. She actually called twice, so it came a little later in the movie. He insults her the first time around, saying, you're just a leech. Don't you want more from life just to be, taken care of? She's like, no, not really. So she calls back and, she's obviously been thinking about what he said and it's upset her. And he can tell how upset she is. And, he comes on with, you got a belly button? You got 2 belly buttons, and he talks her down, and it shows that Barry Champlain has more depth than just being a narcissist asshole. I mean, he is a caring person, and you can tell he does care for people, and he shows this in this scene What'd you guys think of that, Tony?
No, it was a great scene. It was, but again, it's one of the small handfuls where you feel like you see who he really could be,
Right.
because we never see who he really is except an asshole.
Right.
Because 90% of somebody is what I'm going to believe. If I see you 90% of the time being an asshole, you're an asshole. I don't care if you don't kick the puppy you see walking down the street, or you contribute $10,000 to cancer refund. If you're an asshole 90% of the time, you're an asshole.
Right.
So it's like, even though he shows moments of clarity, we'll say, of being a good person, I don't believe he is a good person.
Yeah, no, I mean, everybody's got a little slice of humanity in them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's like 90% narcissist.
Yeah,
so,
he is. He's bad.
You know.
And I'll tell you, through a lot of these scenes, the facial expressions that Eric Bogosian was putting out were like, I mean, he was selling it, right?
His eyes. It's all about his eyes.
It is. And his mouth, he just, he looks twisted and just insane.
Honestly, he portrays such a great look of disgust.
Yeah.
Like he's got this like he just threw up in his mouth look. Talking to almost all of these people. It goes from like frothing rage to just like, I can't even get another word out.
Yeah.
He's and I've seen him in other things, and I've never been blown away by his performance. I mean, he's been good, but this is his tombstone movie. Totally.
Oh, 100%. I think a lot of it comes from the fact that, he did this on that, that off-Broadway play. So he probably really got a chance to, develop this character longer than most people probably would when getting ready for a movie. I mean, this is his baby. He conceived it. So really interesting. Is this scene when they have the close-up on his face and the studio is spinning behind him? Did we already see that?
That's the revelation. That's the revelation final.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're pretty much almost to the end here. So let me just give you the last bit and we'll break it down. So Barry receives a call from Teresa, another threatening caller. Barry tells off the listeners with a rant. Oh, as the camera circles the room with Barry at the center of it. And this is that just amazing, powerful scene, in my opinion. This is one of the best shots in the movie. The show ends with dead air and Barry saying, I guess we're all stuck with each other. Even after his on-air meltdown, Chuck tells Barry he loved the show and would be working on the national feed deal. Dan begrudgingly tells Barry, nice job. Barry foreshadows the end of the movie by asking, what if I don't come in tomorrow? On the way out, Barry shines Laura on as they walk to their cars. Laura drives off before Barry is confronted by a man asking for an autograph before shooting him dead. We get a radio outro of fans talking about Gary as the camera pulls away from his bloody face. Black and white to color, the radio antenna, and a final sweeping view of Dallas, and ending on the studio reel-to-reel clicking off. Tony, let's hear about the end here.
There's just a lot there. Give me the first few points again. I'm actually,
okay.
As you're going, I'm going this.
Yeah, so he receives the call from Teresa. That was the caller that Delin was talking about.
Yeah. So during, I actually want to take a few steps back, because it's funny because Alec Baldwin is really good in this movie in the sense that he's a corporate, he's his boss. So he wants the show to do good. All he keeps saying is, I've worked this deal. He doesn't really care about Bogosian. He doesn't care about Barry at all. He cares about the deal. You're going to blow this deal. It's like, well, it's my show. I come with it. He's like, he never acknowledges that Barry is the reason. Right. He acknowledges that the show. It's always the show. And watching him, when Ellen's getting ready to call in, he's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, he turns on Barry.
Yeah, he basically wants him to go down in flames. He wants the deal to go bad, so you basically fire him because he's almost like doesn't want Ellen to call in to save him. Mm-hmm. And then he's sitting there listening and just shaking his head as he's going down in flames, knowing it's happening. So at the end, when he has to begrudgingly, great job, like he didn't expect it. Almost like he didn't want it, but here it is. So, but yeah, the spinning, and the thing that's funny is, like, as Teresa's giving him the revelations talk, he's going off on his tangent about how you people need me. I'm the scum. You people are terrible. I don't need you. You need me. You people scare me. Like, all his inner emotions are finally just vomiting out over the air. His face is disgusted. His eyes are bugging out, and the camera slowly starts spinning. So you're seeing everyone in the studio, and by the end of it, you are very, very speed increases with every revolution, showing the anxiety that he has. It's a subtle cinematography trick that gets the emotion of the words to match physically, and it's so fucking good. It's like, it's such a movie lover's geek out moment that's like, when you realize that's there, it's like, oh, good for you. You know?
Yeah. And it's amazing how Oliver Stone was able to make this, like, it's all shot, basically the whole movie's in this little radio station. He makes it feel big. He makes it a world, right?
Yeah, totally does. A lot of neon, a lot of shadows, a lot of lighting, up and down, in and out. You don't know, and a lot of it's the same 5 rooms, but because the lighting and colorization are different, it's almost like dizzying of what doorway goes to what area. But again, it's a small, subtle thing. But yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying with that. What was after the call in and the spinning and
yeah, so he tells him basically, he tells him that he's going to go ahead and work on the deal.
Right.
So you see Dan come with what's his name?
Dietz.
Yes, and and you're thinking, like you said, Dan, you're thinking Dan is watching this deal blow up, but no, the other guy's watching the show and being like, I think he liked it even more. He's like, this guy is freaking gold. He's radio gold, and he's going to give him the deal. And let me ask you this: do you guys think that at this point, Dan thought that all the work he had done was for naught, and Barry blew it? And like you said, maybe he's looking for a reason to fire him. He's obviously pissed at him, and he's turned on him. Where in the beginning of the movie, he's got his back, and he's believing in him, and he's trying to pump him up. And at this point, he wants him to go down in flames. And I almost feel like it's one of those things where it's like he thought it was already ruined, and why not just
let him
just
go.
pour gas on it, right?
Totally.
Yeah, like his biggest blessing was his biggest curse.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think that's one of the things that I always wondered, and I still do watching it again, is that when they come back, he comes in the studio, it's like, hey, we have bad news. We're going to hold off for a few weeks. Was that because the show wasn't as intense as they wanted it to be? Was that a pre-arranged thing? Like, I never got the understanding of what was the real reason for that until tonight, when I realized when Dietz came out, he basically said, this is what we like. It's like, great show. I'm going to talk to the lawyers. So talking to the lawyers, I took it as, we now need to get lawyers involved to protect you from the stuff you're going to say.
Right.
Standards and practices. They have to get them involved to protect you. So that it's almost like Dietz wanted to see how far he was going to go.
Yeah, nice call.
When he didn't go far enough on the first night, when we're sitting here horrified at what he's saying, it's almost like Dietz wanted to see him go all the way. And when he finally saw it happening, that's when he's like, we're going to go through this. I'm going to go back and talk to lawyers. We're going to make this deal go through.
I love that you brought that up, because now it actually brings back another scene in my mind where he asks the producer, how often does this happen? And she goes, oh, like regularly, like you said, like he wanted to see if he was capturing like a real snapshot of what this show is. Like, did he show up on a good night where it was like a ton of drama and craziness? Or was this a one-off and it's kind of a boring show? And, she says, no, this is the regular around here. And then he sees the stakes raised even higher the second night. And, Dan is trying to get him to tone it down. So I don't think Dan really understood what Dietz was looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
It always made you feel like the two of them together, but it's almost like Dan was trying to make the deal. You're going to fuck it up. But Barry actually knew what Dietz wanted.
Yeah.
That's why he kept my show him doing it. And that's why every time you saw Dietz, he kind of had a smirk on his face.
Yeah.
Like knowing it.
Yeah, it's great read on it. I didn't pick up on that, but yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there for sure.
And just his walking the girlfriend out, the producer out, it felt like a breakup. I'm too old for you. You don't know the Beatles. You weren't alive during this. She's like, look, I don't know love, but I know when you care about somebody enough. Like, she's trying to salvage it, and he's basically, that's why I felt he's going to go for Ellen at that point. Because he said, I have to go. And he's like, I'll take a rain check on the burger. Like, he has to go find his ex-wife because he needs to get that back. That's why I felt what Ellen and him had was really, really, and she was honest, and he was just being a dick for the show. Because at that point, he pretty much broke up with her on the walk to the car.
Oh, he definitely did.
So I mean, and and then we get to the end, which you knew was coming, just a matter of how and when. And the way they set it up was just it was what it was. What it was. I can't say it was shocking, but I liked the credits in the sense of he's dead. They pull back. We go to credits, and it's the skyline with all the people we've heard of all night talking about how they like him. Well, he wasn't that bad of a guy. Sure, he was a little mouthy, but no, he didn't deserve to die. And it's like, it's just bullshit. It's
Oh yeah, these same
bullshit.
people that were booing him at the basketball game are now like, oh, maybe he was all right. I think it was that crazy kid Kent that did it.
Yeah. So I mean, it is America. No one's going to take responsibility when something bad happens. Everyone's pointing fingers at somebody else. Everyone becomes a martyr. Everyone becomes a hero, and it's bullshit. And Oliver Stone is so good. Everyone, he got labeled a conspiracy theorist, after the whole JFK thing. But it's like, not for nothing, he came up with a lot more evidence than a lot of like the Warren Report and all that. So I mean, you can call him a conspiracy theorist if you want it, but the man can prove his points. I mean, I'd love to do, and I'm not trying to poke things, but you ever do Natural Born Killers? Oh, I got a lot to say.
Oh, sure.
Boy, me too.
All right, well, we'll put that one on the list then.
His view of America media glorifying killers, violence, and just insanity for media and ratings. That's what this was. You sold crazy. You sold scared. You sold terror. That's how Rush Limbaugh made a living until he died.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what these people are do. And he captured that in a 90-minute film, which blew me away a second time, almost 40 years later.
Yeah, really short film too, right?
Yeah, it flew by.
Yeah.
It's funny. This movie is basically a precursor to Natural Born Killers because it's basically the media and America and the way we treat each other. It's, yes, it's a serial killer movie versus, a talk show radio, but it's kind of a precursor to it if you think about it. Because if you take his thoughts and the thoughts of Barry Champlain a step further, you're going into that realm of when the media gets a hold of something and it goes into the machine and it comes out the other side,
Yeah, completely.
Natural Born Killers, that's with Woody Harrelson?
Yeah.
Yep.
Juliette Lewis.
I don't know if I ever saw it.
Oh my God, how did you never see it?
Yeah, maybe I've seen, pieces of it, but I couldn't even tell you what the plot is. Like what, the two of them go across the country killing people?
Yeah, pretty much.
One of
It's
my favorite
disturbing.
costumes.
Have you guys seen California with Brad Pitt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Around the same time, which was too bad because that was a great movie that got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
Which one do you think was better out of the two?
Oh, Natural Born Killers, without a doubt.
Oh, really? Okay, because I saw California, but I don't think I saw Nash. Cool.
It was
I'd
like
be
three
down
of them.
for
It was
that one.
True Romance, Natural Born Killers, and California. That all kind of came out at the same time with basically the same premise.
I have trouble taking Christian Slater seriously. I don't know if that movie would work for me, to be honest with you.
I definitely wouldn't lump True Romance. And the True Romance that's in the that it's in the Manhunter. It's in the Tony Scott, the action. That one's more action, whereas Natural Born Killers in California are it's a lot more thriller drama.
Gotcha.
Where
Yeah.
I took True Romance. I mean, True Romance is definitely in my top echelon of like 80s action.
Gotcha.
There's a million characters that are just quotable and just hysterical and terrible at the same time.
Let me throw one more title at you, Tony. Have you ever seen Drugstore Cowboy?
Oh God, yeah, with Matt Dillon.
That's like one of my favorites of all times too.
But that one's dark.
Very.
Gus Van Dan don't laugh. That man has no humor in his body.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get some final thoughts on this. So, Dylan, why don't you give me your final thoughts?
Am I giving my score?
Give me your final thoughts and your score. Sure.
All right. So, final thought is definitely not the kind of movie I would normally pick to watch. That being said, outstanding performances by every single person in this movie. I mean, the only other thing I think I had seen Ellen in was Little Shop of Horrors, where she's like singing and dancing with a puppet. So, she was outstanding. Of course, Eric Bogosian was like another level, like everyone has already said. Just really amazing. I don't think I'd watch it again. Let's be fair. I probably won't watch it again, but it was definitely worth my time to watch it. I did catch myself looking at my phone a couple times. Sorry, guys. Um, but I would stop myself. I'd say, no, put it down. Pay attention. So I'd say I'd probably give it a 3 for a rewatch score. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I mean, I know you're going to take the score and make it whatever the fuck you want at the end anyways. So I'm going to give it a 3 because it's not my type of movie. And it's, it's definitely a movie that somebody who's into an Oliver Stone type mood is going to love, but not normally my general fare. So 3 from me.
Okay, Tony, unpack it for us. I want to hear your thoughts on this. Don't hold back, and then give me your score.
There's a handful of movies that, I mean, I'm a horror guy. We've established that. We know that. I'll watch horror day and night. So for me to not watch a horror movie, watch a drama, watch a comedy is rare. So, I mean, this came out in 88. I was watching everything. I worked in a video store all through high school, all through college.
Oh, cool.
And I went and saw a lot of independent films because that's just what I did. And there's always been a handful of movies that will always stand out as a snapshot of the times that I felt were completely accurate of that time that no one knew about. This being one of them. Another one being Menace to Society. Another one being Kids. Those
Kids.
all snapshots of scary, disturbing things that people knew about but no one talked about, and they were just horrifying things to sit through. But you felt like I can't say learned because that sounds like I'm really demeaning it. I don't mean it to, but it's like it exposed you to something that is in your face and you can't turn away from. Watching talk radio, he's so in your face. His voice is so booming. You can't not pay attention. Unlike Dylan, who looks at her phone, you can't not be drawn in by what he's saying at every second, because you want to hear what are you going to be an asshole? Or are you going to try and actually be a good person? So I mean, this movie, whereas it's not my usual fare, is still. I haven't watched it in easily like a decade, 15 years. I haven't even thought about it until you brought it up, and I'm like, oh, I got to do that. This is definitely a movie I would recommend to people. I agree with Dylan. I'm not going to watch this again anytime soon, but it's definitely a movie that I would put on for people's like, hey, what do you want to watch tonight? What's a good movie? I'm like, depending who the group was, this is a movie I would want to watch the people watch it.
Yeah.
And watch their reaction. Like that's when I have movie nights, I try to pick out movies, double features that I think go together, that people will get something from, not just be entertained, but also like if it's the gross crew, I'm going to pull out the most gross stuff. If this is like, hey, you like ghosts? Let me show you the scariest stuff I got. And I'll watch them watch it. Because I mean, I've seen everything, so I don't need to watch it again. I like to watch people watch movies. So this is high on that list of I just showed it to you. Tell me your thoughts. And because this is the kind of film that you get into deep discussions with people across any kind of religious, political, introvert, extrovert kind of personalities. That's gonna you can't not watch this movie and not feel something. So it's a great conversation starter. It's a great movie, cinematography, acting, all top fucking notch. Rewatchability. 3.5 to 4 for a movie that I love. It's definitely 4.5, 4.75. But if we're just doing rewatchability, it's not one I'm going to watch anytime soon because it's such a hard emotional ringer of a movie, watching someone destroy themselves and everyone else around them. So I got to go 3.75.
All right, 3.75 from Tony, 3 from Dylan. As I've already revealed, this is a movie that I've seen, literally no exaggeration. I've probably seen this movie 100 times. I listened to this movie I'll listen to this entire audio through at least once every couple of weeks. I could probably recite this movie word for word. It's freaking awesome. I will watch this again another 100 times easily. And it's obviously a 5 rewatch for me. 100%. So with Tony's 3.75, Dylan's 3, and my 5, I'm not going to go above 5 anymore like I did last week with Neighbors. That was ridiculous, even though it is a 13 and will always be a 13. But this movie is a 5 because it's my scale and there are no rules. And it's a 5. And if you haven't seen Talk Radio, what are you waiting for? Go see this movie. It's fucking awesome. Guys, I want to say I really enjoyed this podcast. It was awesome discussion. I enjoyed the new format. Tony, what did you think?
No, I dug it. It was
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, it went quick. It was an hour and 21 minutes. That's with everything all wrapped up and sealed. So I want to thank you, Delin, as always. I love, watching and discussing movies with you. And Tony, you've become a staple on the show. I love talking about movies with you because you are a movie aficionado. You know your shit, and it comes through on every podcast. And you sounded great tonight, too. I want to say your audio was 5 rewatches. Yeah, it was really good. And of course, I want to thank all the listeners for stopping by, listening to the show, supporting the show. We're going to be doing some social media soon, and we want to get you guys more involved. I want to start getting some emails from you so you can help us make the show better. Give us your thoughts. Start reading some of your emails on the show. I'm not looking for any chats. Okay, so if you're chat, don't call in. Don't write. And we will be back next week. We will be reviewing, and this is a favor to one of our co-hosts. He's asked if we could do it, and I agreed. It's a movie that I've never seen all the way through. Ford Fairlane. And we are going to be watching and discussing this with Pat, the podcaster, with a fully packed bong because he loves this movie.
Oh,
and
God.
yeah, I this is one that I don't think I would ever really watch unless I was asked to, but I think it's about a rock and roll detective as a white Stratocaster, so I do have some hopes. Tony, have you ever seen it?
I love that movie, and I feel dirty saying that. You can't. I don't even. I know I have the DVD somewhere, but I can honestly say it's like you just can't watch. You can't make a movie like that these days. You just.
Oh God, I love it. That's so funny. So we'll be back next week with Ford Fairlane and Pat and his excited opinions. So thanks, you guys, and Tony. We'll come up with something for you to come back and do. Maybe Natural Born Killers if that's something you and Delin are interested in. I would definitely watch it.
That'd be great.
So all right, thanks, guys. Until next time. Hey, did you ever see that movie? Bye.
See ya.